Have you ever looked at the world and wondered, why do the worst people always seem to rise? Why is it that the loudest, the cruelest, the most ruthless among us end up with the most power, while the kind, the honest, the thoughtful are left behind, crushed by systems they don't know how to fight? It's not just bad luck. It's not a glitch in the system. According to Friedrich Nietzsche, it's the system itself. For Nietzsche, power was never about justice. It was never about truth. It was about will, the raw, unapologetic drive to shape the world, regardless of who gets hurt in the process. And once you understand that, the world starts to make sense in a terrifying new way. Nietzsche didn't believe in comforting illusions. He didn't believe that good always wins, or that evil is punished. He believed that most people lie to themselves because the truth is too dangerous, too uncomfortable, too real. But he didn't turn away from it. He walked straight into it. This is not a video about how to be successful. This is a video about why success often has nothing to do with virtue. In the next 7 chapters, we're going to explore Nietzsche's most explosive ideas about morality, power, conformity, and why some of the worst people rise to the top. But more importantly, we'll ask, what can you do once you see the game for what it is? Because Nietzsche didn't want you to give up. He wanted you to wake up. Let's begin. We like to believe the world rewards the good, that if you're honest, kind, and fair, you will rise. That morality is not only right, it's effective. But Nietzsche didn't buy it. He saw morality not as some universal truth, but as a construct, a story we tell ourselves. And like most stories, it's designed to comfort, not to reveal. On the genealogy of morality, Nietzsche makes a radical claim. What we call goodness wasn't always good. In ancient times, he says, the powerful didn't ask whether their actions were moral. They acted, they conquered, they created. And their strength was seen as noble, even divine. But something changed. The weak, unable to match that power, rewrote the rules. They branded strength as evil and called their own weakness virtue. What we now call morality was, according to Nietzsche, born from resentment, not from truth, but from revenge. This doesn't mean kindness is meaningless or that cruelty is justified. Nietzsche's point is deeper. Power does not care about your values. The world does not hand out justice like a school teacher with gold stars. It responds to force, to presence, to will. And often, those who play the moral game get outplayed by those who know it's a game. It's a harsh truth, but Nietzsche believed that facing it was the first step toward freedom. Because as long as you believe morality will protect you, you're vulnerable. You're living in a fantasy that leaves you exposed. Power doesn't ask who deserves to win. It simply asks, who has the will to take what they want? And until you understand that, Nietzsche warns, you'll keep mistaking virtue for strength and wonder why the world keeps rewarding the opposite. To understand Nietzsche's view of power, you have to understand the 2 kinds of morality he believed shaped human history. Not good and evil, but master and slave. Master morality was the morality of the strong. It was rooted in action, in pride, in the joy of being alive. The noble man, Nietzsche said, didn't ask for permission to exist. He affirmed himself. He called what was powerful good and what was weak bad, not out of cruelty, but because it was self-evident. Strength was beautiful. Courage was sacred. Life, in all its intensity, was to be celebrated. But those without power, the ones who were dominated, oppressed, humiliated, they didn't forget. They remembered every wound. And in their helplessness, something began to grow. Resentment. Nietzsche called it resentment, not just anger, but a deep, festering hatred that couldn't express itself directly. So it turned inward. It created a new morality, a reversal of values. Now, humility was called virtue. Obedience became holiness. Weakness was sanctified. And power? Power became a sin. This was not a passive shift. It was a revolution, a quiet one. Those who couldn't win by strength learned to win by shame. They moralized the very traits they lacked and condemned those who had them. Over time, slave morality won. It shaped religion, politics, even culture. And most people, Nietzsche believed, don't realize they've inherited a value system born not from truth, but from bitterness. It wasn't evil that corrupted the world. It was envy, disguised as morality. And Nietzsche's warning was clear. If you don't examine the roots of your values, you may end up living by the ethics of those who resented life and punished anyone who dared to rise above it. Nietzsche didn't just criticize morality. He questioned the very nature of society. And what he saw disturbed him. Beneath the surface of every culture, every nation, every institution, he sensed something primal. The fear of the individual who dares to rise above the rest. He called it the herd instinct, the silent agreement we all feel, often without knowing it, to blend in, to be safe, to conform. In the herd, you're protected, but only as long as you don't stand out. Because the moment someone dares to think differently, to live with too much intensity, to speak too freely, they become a threat. Not because they've done something wrong, but because they remind the herd of everything it doesn't want to face. Nietzsche believed the crowd doesn't hate greatness because it's evil. The crowd hates greatness because it's honest, because it reveals, by contrast, how small most lives have become. The herd resents the one who questions, who creates, who refuses to bow, and so it punishes him. Not always with violence, often with mockery, with silence, with the quiet, invisible tools of shame. He saw this dynamic everywhere, in politics, in education, in religion, the slow grinding down of originality in favor of what is useful, obedient, controllable. And he warned that in a world ruled by the herd, mediocrity would be treated as morality, and excellence as arrogance. But to Nietzsche, the goal of life wasn't to be accepted. It was to become what you are, even if it means being alone, even if it means being hated. Because the price of blending in is your soul, and the price of standing out is freedom. Forget survival, forget happiness. Nietzsche believed that beneath every human thought, desire, and action lies something deeper, something darker. He called it the will to power. This wasn't just the desire to dominate others. It was the raw, inner force that pushes every living thing to grow, to assert itself, to expand beyond its limits. Plants reaching for the sun, artists creating against all odds, thinkers breaking through old ideas. All of it, Nietzsche said, is the will to power in motion. But here's the twist. Most people don't recognize it, because the will to power doesn't always look like strength. It often hides behind masks. Some pursue power through politics, others through art, others through morality, or even self-sacrifice. Nietzsche believed that even the saint, who denies himself, suffers, obeys, might be exerting power in a more subtle form. Power doesn't vanish just because someone acts humble. Sometimes it becomes more dangerous when it hides. This is where Nietzsche's genius cuts deepest. He saw that power isn't just out there, in governments and corporations. It's in you. It's the part of you that wants to rise above who you were yesterday. The part that refuses to be tamed. The part that says, I will create my own meaning, even if the world gives me none. But most people suppress it. They trade their inner force for comfort, for safety, for approval. Nietzsche wasn't asking you to dominate others. He was asking you to stop lying to yourself, to stop pretending you're weak, because somewhere inside you, there is a will, not to obey, not to survive, but to become. And until you awaken it, you'll live by borrowed values in a life that never truly felt like yours. Nietzsche never said the worst people look dangerous. In fact, the ones you should fear the most are often the ones who speak of justice, morality, and the greater good. Not because those ideals are false, but because they can be used. Power, when naked, is obvious. But when it puts on a mask, when it speaks in the language of compassion, fairness, or salvation, it becomes something far more insidious. Nietzsche saw that some of the most ruthless individuals hide behind virtue, not as a shield, but as a weapon. They don't conquer by force. They conquer by claiming they're saving you. He called it the priestly type. Not just literal priests, but anyone who gains control by defining what is good and evil for others. These are the moral architects of society, the ones who decide what should be admired, what should be condemned, and who should be cast out. They rarely raise their voices. They don't need to. Their power lies in suggestion, in guilt, in shaping the conscience of the masses. And here's the danger. Once you believe someone is virtuous, you stop questioning them. You hand them authority, thinking you're obeying goodness itself. But Nietzsche warned, those who speak most of morality are often those who have mastered the art of manipulation. True evil doesn't look like a monster. It looks like a savior. It speaks softly, but binds tightly. It doesn't demand obedience. It convinces you that obedience is the highest good. Nietzsche didn't tell us to abandon morality. He told us to watch it, to ask, who benefits when this is called good? Because if you never ask that question, the worst people won't need to take power. You'll give it to them, gratefully. Nietzsche never said good people don't exist. He simply pointed out that the world is not built for them. In a society ruled by appearance, competition, and hidden power games, decency is often a disadvantage. The kind hesitate. The honest speak plainly. The thoughtful question themselves, while others move forward without doubt. And in a world that rewards aggression, confidence, and manipulation, these qualities can become a quiet curse. The good carry weight, others don't. They feel guilt where others feel strategy. They think about consequences long after the moment has passed. And worst of all, they believe in fairness, even when everything around them proves otherwise. Nietzsche saw this clearly. Goodness, in its purest form, is not weak, but it is exposed. It stands without armor in a world made of knives. That's why decent people often get crushed, not because they lack strength, but because they refuse to become what the world demands in order to win. They won't betray themselves. They won't fake conviction. They won't climb over others just to reach the top, and so they fall behind. Or worse, they lose faith. Nietzsche didn't mock these people. He respected them, but he refused to lie to them. He refused to tell them that virtue alone would protect them, because it won't. If you want to remain good in a world that rewards the opposite, you must first understand the cost. You must stop expecting the world to play fair. Only then can you decide, consciously, what you are willing to lose in order to remain whole. In Nietzsche's eyes, goodness without strength is not enough. But strength without goodness? That's where monsters are born. Nietzsche never wanted you to choose between being good or powerful. He wanted you to transcend the question entirely. In his later work, especially Beyond Good and Evil, he dismantles the moral categories we cling to, good, bad, right, wrong, and invites us into something far more dangerous and far more honest, the creation of our own values. Not borrowed, not inherited, not imposed, created. To live beyond good and evil is not to reject morality. It is to outgrow it. To stop living by rules designed to control you and start living by principles that reflect who you really are. It's the most terrifying freedom imaginable. Because once the old structures fall away, you can no longer blame them. You stand alone, without excuses. And every action, every word, becomes a reflection of your will. Most people never make it that far. They cling to ready-made systems because freedom means responsibility. It means facing the weight of your choices without hiding behind tradition or approval. But Nietzsche believed this burden is the beginning of real strength, the kind that doesn't dominate others, but refuses to be dominated. He called this kind of person the Übermensch, the one who dares to shape meaning from chaos. Not a tyrant, not a ruler, but someone who has mastered themselves. Someone who doesn't need the world's permission to live truthfully. The worst people succeed because they understand the game of power. But Nietzsche wanted something more. He wanted you to leave the game entirely, not to become like them, but to become yourself. Not a pawn, not a tyrant, a creator.